Why did some of the brightest minds in history prefer solitude? What drives great thinkers to reject social life? And is isolation a curse or a privilege reserved for the intellectually superior? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most pessimistic and visionary philosophers of the 19th century, had an answer to these questions, and it was far from flattering to society. To him, the world was full of shallow people driven by petty impulses, trapped in empty conversations and trivial distractions. Genius, by its very nature, required distance from this mediocre spectacle. As he wrote, "Solitude is the fate of all exceptional spirits." But was he right? Or is this disdain for social interaction merely a symptom of an inability to connect with others? Consider figures like Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, or Isaac Newton, all known not only for their brilliance, but also for their isolation. Were they examples of intelligence that transcends the ordinary, or simply misunderstood souls condemned to wander alone in the world? Today, we dive into Schopenhauer's ideas to understand why intelligent people seem less concerned with social life, and whether this is truly an advantage or just a sophisticated form of alienation. For Schopenhauer, solitude was not a choice, but an inevitable consequence of intellectual superiority. The more a person stood out intellectually, the harder it became to find peers of equal caliber with whom to share profound ideas and emotions. Superior intelligence, in his view, naturally creates a barrier between the individual and society, as the concerns and interests of the majority are radically different from those who perceive the world in a broader way. A man can only be himself when he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. Only in solitude is one truly free. Solitude was not merely a burden, but a necessary refuge. He saw society as an environment where intellect was frequently stifled by social expectations and the trivial concerns of the majority. Schopenhauer observed that intellectually superior individuals often felt displaced when interacting with the ordinary world, as they perceived realities beyond common understanding. This isolation can be traced throughout history in genius figures. Nikola Tesla, for instance, spent much of his life alone, avoiding human contact whenever possible, believing it would interfere with his work. Friedrich Nietzsche, another thinker who valued solitude, stated that the crowd is a sea in which free spirits drown. Yet this isolation comes at a cost. The need to withdraw from social conventions can result in a deep sense of alienation. Schopenhauer acknowledged this dilemma, believing that while solitude could be liberating for great thinkers, it could also weigh heavily on the soul. Many of history's greatest intellectuals experienced periods of depression and anxiety, not due to weakness, but because they perceived the world more deeply than most could fathom. This raises the central question: is this isolation a curse or a blessing for Schopenhauer? For him, the answer was clear. He believed that great thinkers should embrace solitude as a gift, for only in silence and away from social mediocrity could they achieve their greatest accomplishments. Schopenhauer did not view social life as a space for genuine exchange or authentic connection, but as a grand stage where individuals play predefined roles, trapped in a perpetual performance of appearances and self-interest. To him, society was merely a stage where people act for one another, hiding their true intentions behind carefully constructed masks. For the majority, sociability was a mask that concealed their banality. This pessimistic view was closely tied to his main work, The World as Will and Representation, where he argued that everything we perceive is merely a projection of our mind. Social life to him was an illusion, a spectacle that distracts individuals from true self-knowledge and understanding of the world. Schopenhauer believed that most people lived bound by trivial concerns, status, gossip, petty struggles for power and recognition. In his view, the average person was a slave to the will, a blind and irrational impulse driving actions and keeping us trapped in endless desires. The pursuit of social validation was merely a reflection of this uncontrollable will. This disdain for social life was not unique to Schopenhauer. Other great thinkers also expressed contempt for society's superficiality. Nietzsche, for instance, stated that convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. emphasizing how people cling to illusions instead of facing reality honestly. This conflict between the pursuit of knowledge and social demands created an unbridgeable gap. Yet there is a side effect. Prolonged solitude can lead to disillusionment, apathy, and even contempt for the outside world. Schopenhauer was fully aware of this and warned that for those able to see beyond social illusion, the only alternative was to accept this harsh reality and learn to live with it. How does this isolation manifest in daily life? Why do intellectually superior individuals often feel frustrated by social interactions? Schopenhauer spared no words in expressing his view of humanity. To him, most people were driven by superficial, selfish interests, lacking inclination for deep contemplation or thought. This inevitably created a chasm between the intellectually elevated and the distracted masses, who are caught up in trivialities and futilities. Mediocrity generally only recognizes itself, while the genius sees it but finds themselves alone. Intellectual isolation occurs because thinkers, by nature, seek to understand the world profoundly, while most focus on trivialities like status or fleeting entertainment. The genius seeks to unravel existence's mysteries, but when attempting to share ideas, they often face indifference or misunderstanding. This explains why so many great thinkers felt frustrated with society. Schopenhauer himself despised interacting with ordinary people, believing that the majority's mediocrity stifled the brilliance of the few. This resonates with Voltaire's famous phrase, "The secret to boring people is to tell them everything you know." The issue is not only communication difficulty, but also the difference in interests. The genius pursues universal truths, while most seek pleasure and distraction. This conflict was inevitable. For Schopenhauer, the intellectual gap made social interaction burdensome for those with elevated minds. Nikola Tesla avoided social events and trivial interactions, seeing them as a waste of time. Isaac Newton was known for his impatience with mundane conversations. Even Albert Einstein, one of history's most celebrated scientists, admitted he preferred solitude over the company of those uninterested in profound ideas. Yet this distancing from society is not solely the genius's choice. Often society itself rejects unconventional thinkers. Innovative and orthodox thought tends to provoke discomfort and resistance. Nietzsche called this resentment of mediocrity, the majority's tendency to disdain and attack what they cannot understand or what makes them feel inferior. This conflict between the pursuit of knowledge and social demands created an unbridgeable gap. Yet there is a side effect. Prolonged solitude can lead to disillusionment, apathy, and even contempt for the outside world. Schopenhauer was fully aware of this and warned that for those able to see beyond social illusion, the only alternative was to accept this harsh reality and learn to live with it. So, how should great thinkers navigate a hostile world? Schopenhauer believed the solution was not trying to fit in, but embracing and cultivating solitude as a refuge for reflection and contemplation. Solitude for Schopenhauer was both destiny and choice. He saw isolation as an inevitable result of superior intelligence, but also as an opportunity for intellectual and spiritual growth. The common man cannot bear solitude, feeling comfortable only in the company of others. The elevated mind seeks solitude, as it is there that they find themselves. This brings us to an essential point. Solitude is not punishment, but privilege. It allows the thinker to immerse themselves in their ideas without distractions or the need to conform to empty social interactions that dominate daily life. In this silent space, creativity flourishes and understanding deepens. Many of history's greatest thinkers, scientists, and artists made solitude their inseparable companion. Emily Dickinson spent much of her life isolated, dedicated entirely to writing. Kant was known for his meticulous routine and disdain for social events. Beethoven, despite increasing deafness, found in solitude the strength to create some of the most powerful symphonies ever composed. Solitude not only allows for greater depth of thought, but also preserves the genius's authenticity. Schopenhauer believed that excessive social engagement risked diluting brilliance and compromising clarity. This perspective resonates with the Buddhist concept of detachment, one of Schopenhauer's key philosophical influences. Buddhism teaches that attachment to the external world and social interactions often leads to suffering. True growth occurs through introspection and liberation from worldly illusions. Yet there is a dilemma. Humans are social by nature, and prolonged solitude can induce anguish and melancholy. Even the greatest thinkers, valuing isolation, suffered from a lack of meaningful connections. Nietzsche also saw solitude as a path to greatness, but acknowledged its potential pain. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he describes the philosopher as a hermit descending the mountain to share wisdom, only to encounter rejection and misunderstanding. This dilemma is real. Withdrawal brings freedom, but also an existential weight. Schopenhauer, however, proposed a solution. He believed that while the genius could never fully fit into society,